as a real estate broker, I want to make sure that this person's aware that this house is being sold,
Right.
that we're going to be listing it.
And if they won't leave, it's a big red flag. I've caught them listening at the door before. Yeah, it's another red flag.
Wow, for the specific property with the legal description. Wow.
And people think, well, if I don't have a will, I won't have to go through probate, which is not true, because heirship is also a probate process.
That's been like the common thing. All these executors that I've dealt with selling their house, eventually in that conversation, they're like, oh, Jeremy, I'm talking with the attorney now. I don't never want to deal with this ever again.
Don't treat her like a child. Just because she has the diagnosis of early onset dementia doesn't mean she's not there. Attorneys in general try to be sensitive to the fact that these are adult human beings who have gotten to this point in life, and some with better results than others, but still they're entitled to that.
This is where a good lawyer comes in handy to make you think through all of this. That's fantastic. That's fantastic, Marilyn.
I almost went all Marilyn on them, and
Marilyn, you seem so sweet. I'm wondering what all Marilyn looks like.
Yeah, ask my kids.
Something so simple, but it's actually a big deal. I've had several situations recently where squatters have taken over, and people don't realize a vacant house, that's very easy to happen if it's in the city or, believe it or not, I see it all the time. It's actually much more common than people think. Marilyn, you're speaking my language. You've gotten into the real estate territory. So I want to dig into this, because now we're getting into real estate. That's my world here. Okay. Welcome to the Texas Probate Real Estate Podcast. This is where we bring exciting and interesting discussions surrounding probate real estate and everything that you might need to know as you're going through this process. My name is Jeremy Kritt. I'm the owner and broker of Kritt Real Estate. I help executors and administrators sell real estate in probate quickly and profitably, and making sure that they do it respecting the legacy that they've been entrusted with. Today, I have an amazing guest. I am so excited to have her with us. We've had a lot of guests on our program, but this is actually someone who is very, very distinguished. Today, I have Marilyn Miller, who is the owner, I guess, chief attorney or chief counsel. She's the main woman at MG Miller Law. And she actually specializes in elder law. And we're going to actually get into some very interesting topics that we have not covered yet on this program surrounding elder law. And really things that Marilyn is really specialized in. Marilyn, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited for you to be here. I've been really looking forward to this episode. Before we get into some of the topics we want to get into in our program today, I would like you to just give us a little bit of an idea of who you are as a person. Where did you grow up? Where did you study? How did you get into law? Tell us how you became the person you are today.
Long story made short, I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, and went to high school there. Went to Florida to school for a year, then back to University of Kansas. Was studying biochemistry, actually, and microbiology. Met my husband, got married. We moved to Iowa, Kansas, where it didn't need any microbiologists or biochemists. So I went to education and eventually ended up in law school. My dad was a lawyer. My uncles and cousins were lawyers. So that started my legal career. And we came to Texas in 1988 and moved to Dripping Springs, where we still live, have two boys. And I was with a couple of firms, and then decided to go out on my own in 1992. And here I am.
Now, that's fantastic. That's fantastic, Marilyn. I think you have a very interesting legal background. Tell us a little bit about kind of like the different kinds of law you've practiced, and how you got to where you are now with your legal profession.
Okay. So as I said, we'd been married a few years when I went to law school, and we were starting a family. So I was doing the family starting up while I was in law school. And the first job I had after law school was clerking for the bankruptcy court. It was a 1-year clerkship in Kansas City. It was amazing. Learned a lot, met a lot of people. And we were going to put off the family planning until after that clerkship, which of course didn't work. And as I was looking for a job and reproducing, I decided to go back and get my LLM in tax, and which was an excellent. My dad suggested I do it, and he was kind of always right. I never listened to him, but he was always right. Good lesson in parenting too. Just be patient; they'll get there. So I got my LLM in tax, went to work for a tax firm, wonderful tax firm, but decided that wasn't where I wanted. That wasn't why I went to law school. I didn't know why I did, but that wasn't it. So I went out on my own, prosecuted for the city of Kansas City in their municipal court part-time to pay the rent, and got bankruptcy referrals, got family law referrals, got a little, people were very kind and referred things to me that I could do. And then I went to work for a gentleman. He offered me an office space, and he did federal criminal and corporate, so helped him. And then we moved to Texas. And so brought my solo practice down here. And my father, the attorney, sent me a Kansas Law Journal article on elder law and put a margin note in it, said, "This is the future." And I thought, probably right. So I looked, took some elder law, went to some seminars down here, started going to national conferences. And so between that and my bankruptcy, I had kind of parallel tracks until my assistant couldn't keep up with two things at once. And she said, "You got to choose." So bankruptcy was falling off as far as my business. So we focused on elder law. But it's been
Okay.
interesting.
It's kind of interesting to hear your father's influence on your life. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, just out of curiosity, what do you think sparked his thinking on that being the future? What do you think was going on for him, or did he ever tell you, or what's your thoughts on that?
We never really discussed it, but as I look back on his practice, he was also a solo. He started practicing in Kansas City, in the 30s. So, and he wanted me to go into corporate law. Really, he said, "Get a corporate client, and then you can do what you want."
Mhm.
But he also, I saw him help old widows, and I can remember going out to the county home with him to visit, and my husband used to call it the lawyer Miller work. It's what he did to give back. And so I think he saw that, not that there's not money in elder law, and not that it's not a viable practice, but it's also a way to help and have those opportunities to branch out a little from the traditional estate planning. Not that estate planners don't do that too, but it's a broader area. And I think he saw that as being where his kind of approach to law was headed, and it was always going to be there. We're always, the population's aging. We're always going to have a need for elder law attorneys.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I want to share a little something with you, Marilyn. I've been practicing real estate for just almost 10 years, and it'll be 9 years in August. And before I got into real estate, I was an English teacher. I really didn't know anything about law at all. Of course, when you become a real estate agent, you're not a lawyer, but the law really affects what you do. You start paying attention a little bit to what's going on out there. And of course, then as I started helping people sell property in probate, you start getting exposed to all of the situations that people are going through, the difficulties, the challenges, the emotions, the legal process that they're going through. A lot of times our sales have to fit within that process, so we have to know what's going on. And it's funny because, elder law, I remember hearing that term for the first time, and I was kind of like, what is that? Like, what is elder law? What does that mean? And I was just wondering if you could just help us understand, how do you define elder law? Who's the ideal client that needs an elder law attorney?
Good question. I'm not sure it's not a textbook answer. Holistic is not one of my favorite words, but it fits here because it's a holistic practice. It encompasses estate planning, probate, guardianship, special needs planning. We have a familiarity with a lot of things like housing and veterans planning that would affect the older population or the special needs population. And so that's what you can expect your elder law attorney to at least be familiar with. And sometimes we see that and say, "You've got this. By the time you get here, let me know what it is, and I will be more familiar with what." You can't keep up with everything all the time, but the core areas, at least, of
Yeah.
estate planning, probate, special needs are there. The ideal client is anyone who I think needs to review their life situation and get a handle on their options going forward. We do a lot of in-depth discussion with the client on what their concerns are. I let the client start the conversation, because I have found that if I start where I want to start, they may not pay attention till I get to their issue. So if we start with their concerns, we can build around that. And I get a better idea of where they want to go. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. It's interesting, for the average consumer out there or person that's looking for legal services, I think it's sometimes it can be kind of confusing. I know for myself, like I'm driving down 183 in Austin and I see, an attorney's office, maybe it's a single, attorney, and it says immigration law, tax, he's doing everything. He's doing every law, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, for non-lawyers like myself, well, at least in the beginning, we kind of think, well, the attorney kind of knows everything. He knows all the law, right? He knows every little thing, every question I have. And of course, the law is so big that, it's probably unlikely you're going to be
Exactly.
able to
Yeah.
know everything, right?
Well,
And
yeah. And
no,
one of
please,
the things
please.
that I learned in the tax firm that I didn't stay with was that you can't do it alone. And even here, I refer tax matters and tax issues out to a tax professional, because even though I may understand the basis and the issues, I don't know that depth. I have real estate professionals that I refer to. I've got, so a friend of mine calls it a three-legged stool. You've got you've got the real estate, you've got the tax. However it goes, but you can't do it alone. So,
Yeah. 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 And it's similar in real estate too. Like, for example, you're not going to see me selling a skyscraper in Austin, downtown
yeah,
Austin, right? That's not, I don't do that real estate, right?
exactly.
There's specializations, areas of knowledge or competency that, it's like, yeah, it takes time to develop, right? You don't want to go outside. You might hurt your client going outside of that if
Right,
you don't know
right,
what you're doing. Yeah.
exactly.
So one of the things I learned about you, Marilyn, is you shared with me about the National Academy of Elder Law,
Yes.
and I'm very curious to learn more about that. What is that, and how are you involved with that organization?
So the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys is, someone defined it something. It's like the trade organization. It's you can join the NALA, and they have educational programs. They've got conferences. They've got listservs. It helps you grow in the profession. I think that's the article that my dad read in 83 or 84 or 87, because that's about when they started. And it was a group that knew that there was a need for a national outreach. That's the other thing about NALA, is that you can, if you've got somebody that's just moved from Wisconsin or is going to go to Wisconsin, you can find a Wisconsin lawyer that you can talk to and coordinate with, as far as the elder laws up there as opposed to your state. Within NALA, there's also a certification organization. And I don't know if you want to get to that in a minute or
Yeah,
just.
please, please.
Okay. So that's the National Elder Law Foundation, NELF. And NELF is in charge of certifying elder law attorneys. And for that, you've got to be in practice for at least 5 years, in practice in elder law for at least 5 years, at least 60 matters a year, so many hours. You've got to pass an examination. You recertify every 5 years. And there are, I think right now, 525 certified elder law attorneys across the country.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I really like the idea that they recertify. So it's someone who's very
Yeah,
committed, obviously, to that
correct.
area. That's really cool. Well, one of the things I thought about as I was preparing for our program here together is I was just trying to think about what are some of the that I come across as a real estate
Okay.
broker. A lot of my clients they're older. They're
Right.
older, especially with the probate clients. It could be a surviving spouse. It could be, older children. This is very, very common, at least for me. And something that comes up a lot is the idea of situational capacity
Yes.
and, their competency. And I've had several situations where it was kind of tricky. It was like I wasn't sure whether like we were like all together or what's going on there, and it puts the someone like me kind of in a hard situation, right? Because you want to make sure that people know what they're doing, that everything's above
Right.
board, and so I was just wondering if you could share with me, at least from kind of your perspective, how should we think about these issues? And I just would be curious to hear what you think about this kind of issue.
Your instincts are spot on. And I think they are. And it's really the same for the attorney, because we're not doctors, we're not psychologists, we don't do the assessments, but we can watch for the warning signs. And it also depends a lot on what we're signing and what level of capacity they need. For testamentary capacity, For instance, they need to know the object of their bounty and then what they're doing.
What does that mean? What does that
Where
mean?
they want their stuff to go,
Okay. Okay.
and why. Yeah. And
That's the technical object of their bounty. That's the
objects of their
technical term.
bounty. Yes, that's, yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's a new one for me. I didn't know that. So I'm learning something.
Yeah, that's what the case law says. And so, and they should be oriented to time, place, where they are, who they're, and why. We go into that sometimes too. If it's outside of the standard, if you will, I give to my wife and then to my children. If they're cutting somebody out, we go into that a little bit deeper and find out why. They may be better on any given day than another day. We try to do it in the morning because there's sundowning is what they refer to it. They're not as sharp in the afternoon as they are in the morning. But if there are real capacity issues, did I tell you about the story about the lady that was petting the dog and said, "Nice kitty"?
Tell us about that. That sounds interesting. So tell me about it.
Had a couple in there doing their powers of attorney, and they were married. They had one child. We were trying to get her powers of attorney done. And it was just the powers of attorney so he could probably sell real estate. And we chatted with her, and she was lovely, and she knew who her husband was. She knew who her daughter was. And we got the documents together, and we're standing, my assistant and I were standing in the doorway ready to take the documents in. And I had an office dog at the time, Schnauzer. And we looked at her, and she's down there petting Silky going, "Nice kitty, nice kitty." And we looked at each other and went, "Oh, okay." And backed up a step. And the fact, it may have felt like her cat. Maybe she thought she knew. It didn't matter to the situation, whether she knew that was a dog or a cat. She knew who her husband was. She knew who her daughter was. She knew she wanted him to help her. And we'd been through that discussion. So that was the capacity she needed.
Got it.
So we kind of work through those things. If there's a serious issue, and I think there may be, and they're doing something out of the ordinary, if they're cutting the kids out and giving it all to the grandkids, there may be a perfect, because the kids got plenty of money. But you want to make sure that that's someplace and that they know what they're doing.
Yeah. Do you just go on feel, like just kind of the feeling of the situation, or is there like an analytical way to approach it, or is it you just have to kind of take it as it comes, and then you're thinking, okay, do they, okay, this is what they need, this is what they need to know. What's the framework to think about it? I guess is what I'm thinking.
It kind of depends on who's there, why they're there, what's gone on in the past, who's bringing them in.
Yeah.
And
so you need context.
Precisely. You need context in the whole thing. And I also asked, I said, do you have a family physician? If you do, have them do an assessment. Doesn't have to be, you don't have to go to a specialist, just does your doctor think you're okay? And then the question comes up, well, why would you send them to the doctor to see if they're okay if they weren't okay? And it opens up a whole different, So it can be, but if you've got a doctor's opinion that says, she's fine. She's peculiar, but she's fine. That's the other thing you need to look for. Is she just colorful? Sometimes you get colorful.
Marilyn, one thing that I have experienced doing real estate, because my whole life revolves around people signing contracts. And so one of the things I've picked up on is sometimes there is like a adult child, who is very protective of their mom or their dad, and they've got powers of attorney, and they want to kind of do everything for the parent, but the parent is actually like, maybe like they approach me, they want to engage me. And so I'm doing my due diligence. I'm trying to figure out what are we trying to do here? What are we selling? Who's involved? Who are the players? And then I'm like, so this is your mom's house. Okay. And can I speak with your mom? Like, I want to speak with the mom, right? Because like, who are you? Right. So, yep. And then they'll say, like, my mom is, like something related to this capacity idea, right? Yep. This situation. And it's like, well, that may be true, but as a real estate broker, I want to make sure that this person is aware that this house is being sold, right, that we're going to be listing it. And it's kind of an issue. I'll end up talking to the, mom or dad, whoever it is, and I'm like, well, I mean, she's okay. She understands what I'm saying. Like, so it's kind of, I find that kind of awkward. Have you ever come across that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I always meet with the principal, always meet with the person who's signing without the other person in the room. And if they won't leave, it's a big red flag. I've caught them listening at the door before. Yeah. It's another red flag. Okay. Also, I look at what if they already have a durable power of attorney, look to see if it's effective immediately or if it takes effect only upon incapacity, because, and then they need a doctor's note for sure for the agent to be able to act under the power of attorney because you've got to have a proof. You should have a proof of incapacity before it takes effect. So there's a lot of levels.
What do you think families, parents, what do people get wrong about this issue from your point of view? Maybe mom has a little bit of dementia or
Oh,
whatever, or it's like very early onset, and now they're
yeah.
like I said, like they go overprotective or something like that.
Seeing
What
the
do people
troops.
need to know? Yeah.
First of all, the senior in the matter, mom, needs all the dignity she can preserve. You can preserve for
Mm.
her. I mean, that's the most important thing. Don't treat her like a child. Just because she has the diagnosis of early onset dementia doesn't mean she's not there. And that's the other thing that I think we as elder law attorneys and attorneys in general try to be sensitive to the fact that these are adult human beings who have gotten to this point in life, and some with better results than others, but but still they're entitled to that. The thing that I find interesting is you'll have one child here with mom, or is it mom or dad, and have here with mom, and the other child is in Dallas and talks to mom twice a year on the phone, thinks she's fine because mom can be fine for 10 minutes. And then they come down here and, oh my God, what's happened? Which has been happening for a year and a half, or 5. So it depends on the perspective of the child or helper that is coming in and how much they've seen. And sometimes you just have to sit the family down and say, this is what we're going to do and this is what we have to do. And she's in charge or she's not in charge. Or sometimes it comes to a guardianship if we've got people fighting over things, and it's, yeah.
At what point does someone you go like, hey, this person needs to be like someone else has to be making the decisions for this person? How do you draw that line where it's like, okay, I'm almost taking their power away?
Yeah. If they become a danger to themselves or others, if they can't safely live by themselves, they're leaving the stove on at night, or they're, in a dangerous neighborhood, they're not locking the doors, or they're going out, they get lost going to the grocery store. You may need somebody either to be there to kind of oversee, or the agent under the power of attorney to take over. Another thing, just to back up for a second, if you've got an agent under a power of attorney, that agent has a fiduciary duty. And I don't think they always realize that they've got a fiduciary duty, a higher duty, a higher level of care to take care of mom's stuff. And they're supposed to give mom an accounting for anything that they do under that power of attorney. I don't know that anybody reads the little instructions that come along with the power of attorney, the directions to the agent, but I think this is somewhere the agents act for mom, but they don't necessarily let her know what they're doing. They don't necessarily, not that she would know, but, and I've been thinking about I'm always tinkering with my documents and thinking about saying if the agent under the first named agent takes over, they're supposed to give an accounting to the second named agent, to the backup.
Okay. Okay. So
Just
it's like a
so
checks and
checks and
balances.
balances, exactly.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. Why haven't I
Is
thought
it,
of
did you?
something good came out of this for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's great. Is that a little bit different from how other attorneys think about it?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, my power of attorney has all of the statutory powers, and then another 2 pages, basically, of extra powers that I put in to give the agent the ability to deal with specific real estate, because there are things that I've seen that the agents can't do because they're not included in the statute. And sometimes title companies won't honor have in the past have not honored a power of attorney because the specific real estate isn't in the power of attorney.
Marilyn, you're speaking my language. You've gotten into the real estate territory. So I want to dig
Right.
into this because
Okay.
now we're getting into real estate. That's my
There you
world
go.
here. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me, unpack that for me, because actually this is a little bit new territory for me
Yeah.
personally. So this is very interesting to me. Very relevant. This would be very relevant to any real estate agent or broker
Right.
or anyone helping people with real estate. So, okay, walk me through what you did, but like break it down a little bit more, what you just kind
Right.
of were starting to unpack, which is we have the power of attorney, and you mentioned there's like, I guess, some standard statutory
Right. Broad
powers, really.
statutory powers.
Right. So
Right.
I guess what I'd like you to do for me, if you don't mind, Marilyn,
Yeah.
since I have such a wonderful expert here, is what are those statutory powers, or what are those general things that every
Oh,
power of attorney basically has? And then could you break down from your experience exactly like how does the real estate tie into that? And as you were saying, like it doesn't have certain things that you've noticed that they need to do with real estate. Just really unpack that with a lot of detail for me.
Okay.
I'm very interested to hear that.
So the powers in the statute, they're like they number them A through N, and so there are that many levels of power that the agent has under the law. And they go from there's general real estate, they've got business, they've got digital assets management, they've got dealing with insurance, not trusts. That's a different thing too, but just this broad range of things that an agent might be able to do. What I've run into in the past is with real estate is that some, again, title companies, I'm not bad mouthing title companies because they've got insurance. I mean, they're on the hook big time but their underwriters will say if it's not specifically listed in the power of attorney, we can't use it. This happened to me. The pet peeves come from someplace, right? Okay. So I had a brother and sister-in-law that were in Saudi Arabia. He was with Aramco over there, and they were going to sell a piece of property in Georgetown. I was the agent under their power of attorney. They gave it to me before they left. So I said, okay, we're going to sell this. They didn't know what they were buying or selling when the time they went over. And the title company said, no, they've got to have a special power of attorney for this piece of property.
Wow, for this specific property with the legal description. Wow.
And my sister-in-law had to drive from where they were stationed in Saudi Arabia down to the embassy to get the power of attorney signed. I almost went all Marilyn on them and, you know.
Marilyn, you seem so sweet. I'm
Yeah.
wondering what all Marilyn looks like.
Yeah. Ask my kids. But so I thought, no, calm down, give them what they want. But it just let me know that this is not a figment of somebody's imagination. You know, it happens. And so sometimes if there's, and I at least put, the homestead, the properties that we know are going to be dealt with, it should be good under the statute. I mean, the agent should have, but as an abundance of caution, we'll put, or if they've got real estate in other counties or multiple real estates, we'll add an addendum with whatever real estate they have, just so people know that they've got the right to deal with that. So that's one
very
biggie.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Title companies are very careful. They are
They are.
very careful. And one of the things that's kind of interesting, somewhat related to this, is that a lot of people don't realize, like, when people are selling real estate with a power of attorney, at least in Texas, at least this is my experience, is that, the title company will want to talk to the principal before doing anything. I've had clients where it's like, well, no, I have the power of attorney. It's like, it doesn't matter. They need to still
Exactly.
talk to them to make sure
Yeah.
that you're good.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that.
And they will also ask somebody to sign that the principal had the capacity to sign it when they signed the power of attorney. I've had title companies ask for that too. And
Interesting.
if I notarized it and I can swear to it. If not, I'll say you need to go find somebody who did this, and so they can swear to it, because I want the notary to sign off on it.
That kind of leads me to something that you shared with me in our kind of planning meeting that we had before we met here today. And that is, you have this philosophy of plan your life, not just your estate. And we're talking about issues that, like, I think a lot of the things we're talking about usually are dealt with in a very reactive way. And it's the problem comes up and it's like, okay, I got a problem. I have a legal issue related to this. Okay, now I got to go see Marilyn. But people could avoid that reactive nature and maybe plan it in a way that it's not a crisis when it happens and they've already thought it through. Can you share with me a little bit of, of your philosophy regarding planning, and not just the estate, but your life in general?
Wow, that's broad. What I like to do is help the clients review their situation. That's why I do a lot of talking about family dynamics, where they came from, where they might be heading, what their goals are. And it ranges from 45-minute conversation about grandpa came over from Ireland to, I don't care. I won't be here. I don't care. So, and you take it from there. So what I want to help them make good decisions about what happens between here and the end, and how to, and sometimes they say, I want to make it easy on my kids, but the kids haven't spoken to each other in 15 years. So, okay, that's not going to happen. But we go through how at least they can structure their documents. So somebody's got the ability, A, if they lose the ability to control what they're doing, they've got somebody to step in and take care of it for them. And B, to put it down in writing somewhere, even if it's just in my notes, that why they're doing it. And I always encourage them, I think we talked about this too, encourage communication. Tell your kids what you're doing and why you're doing it. Or if you can't do that, if you don't feel you can do that, at least leave them a letter, leave them something in writing from you so they don't have to hear it from strangers.
Marilyn, is it fair to say that as I've spoken with a lot of attorneys on my podcast, I've been actually kind of thinking about this a little bit is, would you say the vast majority of people don't really have an estate plan? They haven't really thought about it. Is that a real minority, or is it more people than we think?
I think a lot of people, well, I don't know if it's a vast majority, but I think a lot of people don't have anything. They put it off, or they don't think they need it because they don't have enough money. That's an issue too. And that's just not true. You ought to have something.
One of the things I'm actually meeting with a client after us recording this here, and it's actually a couple. The wife is actually the executor of the estate, and it was actually her sister who passed away, who's the decedent. Because of the probate situation and all the difficulties that they've gone through with probate, it's inspired them to get an estate plan together.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I've noticed that that's been like the common thing. All these executors that I've dealt with selling their house, eventually in that conversation, they're like, "Oh, Jeremy, I'm talking with the attorney now. I don't never want to deal with this ever again." So it kind of takes some pain to get people into gear.
It does. It does. And you're right. A lot of it just comes from I've seen the worst. I don't want that for my family. And
Mhm.
and that's another thing when I sit down with clients and they tell me that, I'll say, "Okay, what went wrong?" "Well, she died without a will." "Okay, so we've got an heirship, which it may go to the same places that it would have gone under a will, but you've got a more protracted probate process because you've got to have the court make that determination." Not that it's a bad thing.
Right.
But, it's more steps and more work. People think, well, if I don't have a will, I won't have to go through probate, which is not true because heirship is also a probate process. So
Yeah.
yeah. And also, just because you have a trust doesn't mean you won't go through probate because if there's anything outside of the trust that's been left out on purpose or accidentally, it's going to have to go through probate and probably through a pour over will to go into the trust. But it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
To getting ready to
Yeah.
die is a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot that goes into dying for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Marilyn, I'm thinking of like, okay, I'm speaking with you. You're a pro in this area. I mean, you're extremely qualified, not only, from an intellectual level, but practiced dealing with real situations. I feel like, the average person in the public
Mhm.
doesn't really have a grasp of like, why should I go to Maryland versus the guy with the shingle,
Right.
whatever,
Or
Jones at
online.
law. Yeah,
Or
yeah, or
online.
online, LegalZoom, Rocket Lawyer, or whatever they
Yeah.
call it. Walk me through that. Imagine someone is listening to you and they don't know anything. They're a manager at, McDonald's or
Yeah.
whatever, or
Yeah.
maybe they
Yeah.
work for some company. Walk me through kind of like the thought process that they should be having when they're thinking about engaging an attorney for something like this. What should I be looking for? What should I be thinking about?
I mean, getting something in place is better than having nothing in place. I mean, just in the general scheme of things. But I think where some estate planning falls short is that the attorney or whoever's helping to plan doesn't know what questions to ask. Doesn't, you say, "Do you want to leave it to your wife and your kids?" "Yes." They don't say, "Does one kid have special needs? Do we need to go that route?" What happens if one of your kids has special needs? We build in a contingent trust with special needs powers, with special needs provisions in it. What happens if they're divorced? I had one client come in and they had named the son-in-law as to take after the daughter, and then they got divorced. And we hadn't put in there as long as he's married to my daughter at the time that I die. So we fixed that fast. But what they wanted at the time, I hadn't told them they needed to tweak it. So, because
Marilyn, do you proactively like, okay, let's say you got your clients, you did their planning. Do
Mhm.
you send them like reminders to, hey, we
No,
should look at this, we should update
no.
it, or how does that
No.
work?
I tell them if there's a life change, because I try to draft it so that all of the, well, in law school they called it the parade of horribles. So
Okay.
and think of a child growing up having your mother have this. I told my kids, I said, never let me bust your bubbles because you're going to have dreams, you're going to have plans. I'm going to pick it apart because that's what I do for a living. But, listen to me, but don't pay attention, or pay attention, but don't. But
You
so
sound like a
that's
good
what
mom. Marilyn, you sound like a good mom.
I tried. I did my best. My boys are great. And that's what I try to do for the clients. And it's like, okay, you never expect this to happen, but what if? And so we draft to try to take care of those things. So if your child, God forbid, is in an accident and is on public benefits, if they inherit, there's a provision for that. If somebody dies out of order, there's a provision for that. If we know that there's Medicaid planning possible for either of the spouses, we put a testamentary trust in there so that the spouse's share goes into that testamentary trust. They can still qualify for benefits. I mean, it's those kinds of things that we try to draft in there. So unless there's something catastrophic, more catastrophic that happens, or if I said, I will be happy to review it and sit down with you and talk to see what your life, if it's covered, but I don't, and it's not a bad thing. For the attorneys that do it, it gets people thinking about their lives,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I just don't do it.
When you talk about estate planning, you can have a will, you can have a trust. Should everyone have a trust? What determines maybe a will is sufficient? Maybe there should be a trust. What goes into thinking about what is needed?
That's a really good question. And I had a client ask me the other day, said, do you have a trust? I said, no, I don't. And then, of course, he said, I'm just glad my kids figure it out. No, that's not right. You can't. Trusts they have a really important place in a lot of planning. And the ones where I think it's particularly useful is if you have blended families. Trusts can help protect, the separate shares for the both individuals. You can, if you've got out-of-state real estate, the trust can own that out-of-state real estate and avoid a probate in another state. If you've got incapacity in one of your two or pending incapacity, you've got a management tool for the survivor. Those are kind of one of the big ones where I look at doing a trust, or if somebody just wants a trust, that's fine. It's not a bad tool, but it's a lot of work. So what I tell people, I said, you're paying me up front as much as you would pay for probate down the line. Plus, you're going to have to make sure that all of your assets are transferred in there. You're going to have to sure that they maintain, that they stay in there. That if you get something new or swap, it may be inconvenient to have it in the trust. But it's certainly it's a tool in the toolbox but it doesn't. You don't have to have it in order to have a good estate plan.
I've noticed that there seems to be, I've talked to a lot of attorneys, and it's interesting. Like, I feel like there are some firms, it's like everyone's got to have it. It's like trust.
Right.
Everything's a trust.
Right.
So what's behind that?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I draft trusts. I draft
Yeah.
lovely, wonderful, many-page trusts, and then there's the ancillary documents that go on with go with it. Also, if you've got a power of attorney, the power of attorney needs to say that the agent can deal with the trust or fund the trust, because if you get, let's say mom gets an inheritance and it's not in the trust, you've got to have a way to put it in the trust. And if mom doesn't have the capacity to do that, there may not be a way to transfer it. So it's
a lot of maintenance.
It is.
Yeah, lot of work, and you have to. It sounds like you have to really understand what that trust says. You have to understand the document.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
And I can't tell you the number of times people come in and say, "I've got this 4-inch binder. What does it mean?" And I'll say, and I hope it has a table of contents, because then we can go get to the meat of the issue.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of times and avoiding probate is one reason that people do it. But there are other ways to avoid probate. Also, you can do the transfer on death deeds. But with a trust, there's management. You can control. It's a way of controlling beyond the grave.
Right. Absolutely.
And I've had clients that want to do that.
Oh, what do you mean?
Control beyond the grave. Yeah.
I've tried.
We'll say, I'm going to leave it to my kids, but then it goes to their kids. And there's a rule against perpetuities for trust. It can't last more than 300 years. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
So I've never, or there's a more complicated formula for that. Lives in being, 21 years after the last life in being when I
Oh,
die.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But, they'll say, I don't want my property sold.
Okay.
Okay. And then, well, the other problem that happens is they'll leave real estate in the trust and nothing, but they won't fund it with enough money to take care of it.
Oh, wow.
That's a
Okay.
problem. And
Oh, wow.
so so then the trustee would have to go to court because it then becomes irrevocable. And
Oh,
so they'd have
wow.
to go to court to get permission to do it, or all of the beneficiaries agreeing to do it. It's just, it can,
This is
yeah.
where a good lawyer comes in handy to make you think through all of this.
Are you sure you want this? And
This
that's
is
when I
why we
get
need
told,
Marilyn.
I won't be there. I don't care. Fine. Well, and sometimes we see, I've had people who've had lake property, the vacation home, and they
Yeah.
want to put it in a trust so everybody. I said, okay, that's fine. What are you going to fund it with? Then there's the blank stare, and I said, are you going to have everybody? Well, whoever uses it can pay for it. Well, what about your child that lives in Wyoming that doesn't get down to the lake to use it? Are they going to have to chip in for utilities and taxes and upkeep?
Wow. Yeah.
So
It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to
and
think about.
and how's that going to impact the family dynamics?
Right.
Are they going to resent who, you know? So yeah,
Pla Plan your life, not just the estate. You gotta be holistic. Gotta think through
there you go.
the whole thing. I
Exactly.
love it.
Yep.
Marilyn, we have covered a lot of ground, and I've learned actually many things talking to you
Good.
today. You've really have a really wonderful way of explaining it in a very easy, for the layman, very easy way to understand. So I think your clients are very blessed
Thank you.
to work with you. Because also you have a very nice manner, very very pleasant to talk with, and so I think your clients are very fortunate. And I think they probably know that. I want to wrap up a little bit, and what I like to do is I like to end with something very practical for a potential listener or watcher of the podcast. And that is that, this is the Texas Probate Real Estate
Right.
Podcast. And a lot of people who are searching for answers will come across, clips that we've from our time here together
Mhm.
or the whole episode. I want you to imagine a family, they've lost, a loved one, and, okay, they've had the funeral and, they've grieved for a little while, but now it's like they've got the house, they've got the bank accounts, they've got the bills are starting to come in the mail, right? The reality is that the business keeps going. Their business keeps
Right.
going, even though
Right.
they're not here anymore. What's your advice? What should they do? What are the first things they should do? How do they get their head straight around what's going on?
Make sure they've taken time to grieve. That was a good point that you made. I'll get people to say, "Mom died last week. What do I need to do?" I say, first you need to take a breath, and assess the situation, and then talk to a good probate lawyer. And there are many good probate lawyers in Texas. They aren't all elder law attorneys. They're probate specialists. But go to someone who can assess it. Do they have a will? Does mom have a will? Do you have the original will? Get your documents together, at least for that, so that they'll know. Do a family tree so that the probate lawyer knows if we don't have a good will, who we're dealing with and where we have to go. It doesn't have to be broad and deep, just who the players are. And then get the assets together, what you're dealing with. And this will also let the probate lawyer know what kind of probate to file. There's an heirship, there's a probate with a dependent administration, an independent administration, muniment of title. What are they going to need? They need that information to tell you how to proceed down that road. So get your stuff together before you go. I send out a questionnaire. It's kind of broad. It's got enough detail. Who are you? Who's the decedent? Did they leave a spouse? And generally, what are the assets? And are you named as the executor? And that's where we base the conversation on to start with. And then the attorney should be able to guide them from there. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely, and I think listeners will find that very, very helpful because one of the things I've learned is whether it's like this kind of thing where they're getting ready to meet an attorney, or even just me selling real estate. A lot of times, one of the things I've learned is that I have a lot of knowledge and understanding about a certain thing, and because I do it every day, but the average person doesn't know a lot about it,
Right.
and so when it seems so commonplace to us, but to others
Right.
it may be very new information. And I want to thank you for sharing
Well,
that because,
the other thing that just popped into of my not
yes,
so easy probates, is make sure that the real estate is secured. Make sure that you change the locks. My cousin was the executor of my mother's estate, and that's the first thing he did because there were things that were special to, and I'm in Texas, she was in Kansas, but there were things that were special to all of us, and he didn't want to see them walking out the front door. So he went in and changed the locks. And I've had executors do that here, even before we've gone to probate, just if they can find the authority. I mean, you can't just do it if it's not your house, but as soon
Right.
as possible, have somebody go in and secure the property, get an agreement among all the children that they can be done. But that's important.
That's a big deal. A lot of people actually really underestimate that's something so simple, but it's actually a big deal. I've had several situations recently where squatters have taken over, and people don't realize a vacant house that's very easy to happen
Yeah.
if it's in the city, or believe it or not, I see it all the time. It's actually much more common than people think.
I would not have thought of that as a real problem overall, but yeah, I bet.
It happens. It
Or if
happens.
you've
It
got
happens.
an alarm system would be
Yeah.
good to have, to keep the alarm system on and make sure that you've got a new person to, yeah, just, you can't, you can't be too careful. Again,
Yeah.
advice from mom, you can't be too careful.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've really enjoyed our time here together, Marilyn, and
Thank you.
you've, like I said before, you've really shared so much helpful information, and I think, Marilyn, you also bring. I think one of the things you really bring is I really sense a lot of wisdom from just experience. It really kind of you really exude that kind of that feeling like, okay, I'm speaking to a woman that really she knows what's going on, but also the kind of judgment, and I think that probably just comes just from your really extensive experience
Right.
with all of this.
Yeah.
So I want to
And
thank you
people will,
very
yeah, thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. That's
absolutely. I don't say that to everybody. I really get that vibe from you, and that's cool. And I really hope that if people are looking for a really good attorney to do probate estate planning, I hope that they find you. And could you just tell people like how can people find you if they need your
They
services?
can, I've got a website, mgmillerlaw.net. They can go there and there's a contact box or they can give me a call.
Marilyn, we're going to put in the on the YouTube version of this, we're
Yeah.
actually going to put your information in the description so that
Okay.
if people are watching this on YouTube, they can go into the description. They'll find your information, your contact information where they can find you. Again, I want to thank you very much. We've been here for almost an hour, so I think we're gonna wrap up now. And if you're watching this program, I really want to encourage you if you're going through probate or you need to get your affairs in order, contact Marilyn. We're going to have her information on our website and also on our YouTube channel and the platforms where we distribute this podcast. And again, my name is Jeremy Kritt, owner and broker of Kritt Real Estate. If you are an executor or an administrator of a probate estate and you have real estate and you need a qualified real estate professional to help you sell that property quickly, profitably, and if necessary, as is or in the condition that it's in, because sometimes these probate properties can be a little bit rougher than kind of the average property. Give me a call, get in touch. All of my information is in the description of this video and podcast, as well as you can go to texasprobaterealestate.com. Thank you very much and see you on the next one. And thank you, Marilyn. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Appreciate the opportunity.